I thought I understood security. I really did. I'd spent 37 years in IT security, protecting Fortune 500 companies from hackers, building firewalls, consulting on cryptocurrency, cold storage, training executives on social engineering threats. I knew every attack vector. I knew every vulnerability. I knew how people got compromised. And then I got to Thailand and none of that knowledge mattered because the threat came from inside my own bedroom. I'm Marcus. I'm 61 years old now, though I feel about 90. I lost $720,000 in cryptocurrency over the course of 14 months, and the person who stole it was the woman sleeping next to me every night. The woman I'd married. The woman I'd taught how to use a hardware wallet because I wanted to include her in our financial future. I handed her the keys to the kingdom because I thought love meant trust, and trust meant transparency. I was wrong about a lot of things. I need to tell you this story because I see posts in the crypto forums all the time. Guys my age, guys who made money in tech or Bitcoin early on, guys who think they're smart, guys who think they've got it figured out. They're dating Thai women half their age and they're posting things like, finally found a good one, or she doesn't even care about my money, or we're building something real. Together. I want to reach through the screen and shake them. I want to show them my bank statements. I want to show them the blockchain transactions. But instead I'll tell you exactly how it happened to me, and maybe you'll be smarter than I was. I arrived in Bangkok in January 2024. I'd sold my security consulting firm the previous summer for enough money to retire comfortably, though not extravagantly. Most of it was in cryptocurrency because I believed in the technology, and I'd been in early enough on Ethereum and Bitcoin that my portfolio had grown substantially. I had about $900,000 total, with roughly 80% of it in various crypto holdings. The rest was in a US bank account earning basically nothing. I'd been divorced for 6 years. My ex-wife had remarried within 14 months of our separation, which should have told me something about the state of our marriage long before it ended, but I'd been too busy building the business to notice. My 2 daughters were in their 30s with their own lives. I had no real ties. I'd visited Thailand twice before on vacation and found it fascinating, so when retirement came, I thought, why not spend a year there, maybe 2? I could work remotely if I wanted to pick up consulting gigs. I could live well, on a fraction of what I'd spend in Austin. It seemed logical. I rented a condo in Ari, a neighborhood in Bangkok that had good coffee shops and a decent expat community without being overrun with tourists. The building was modern, had good internet, and the rent was reasonable. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I want to be clear about that. I'd been on dating apps in the US and found them exhausting. I thought I'd take a break from all of that and just enjoy being somewhere new. I met Namfon at a coworking space in February. I'd gone there because my condo internet was being repaired, and I needed to take a video call with a former client. She was working on a laptop 2 tables away, wearing glasses and completely focused on her screen in a way that seemed unusual for Thailand, where people generally seemed more relaxed about work. During a break in my call, I noticed she was coding, Python, from what I could see. That got my attention because in my experience, you didn't see a lot of women in tech in Thailand, particularly not women working independently in co-working spaces. We started talking during the lunch break. Her English was excellent, though she had that particular Thai accent that I'd come to find charming. She was 26, had studied computer science at Chulalongkorn University, and was working as a freelance web developer. She showed me her portfolio on her phone. The work was genuinely impressive. Clean code, good design sense, responsive layouts. This wasn't someone pretending to be in tech to impress a foreigner. This was the real thing. We exchanged Line contacts. For those who don't know, Line is the messaging app everyone uses in Thailand. I'm not even sure I've met a Thai person who uses regular text messages. Everything goes through Line. We started chatting about technology, about Bangkok, about the differences between Thai and American tech culture. It was refreshing to talk to someone who understood my work, who could discuss the technical aspects of security and blockchain without me having to explain basic concepts. Our first actual date was at a Japanese restaurant in Thong Lo. I remember she ordered uni, which surprised me because it was expensive and most Thai people I'd met tended to avoid the pricier items when someone else was paying. She noticed my reaction and laughed. She said her father had been in import-export and the family had done well until he died when she was in university. Her mother still lived comfortably in Bangkok. She had a younger brother who was doing a master's degree in Singapore. She wasn't from poverty. She wasn't from a village in Aizen. She was middle-class Bangkok, educated, with actual career prospects. This wasn't a bar girl. This wasn't someone looking for a foreigner to save her family. Or so I thought. The relationship developed naturally over the next few months. We'd meet for dinner twice a week. Sometimes she'd come to my condo and we'd watch movies. Sometimes we'd explore different neighborhoods in Bangkok. She introduced me to parts of the city I'd never have found on my own. Little coffee shops in residential areas, bookstores with English sections, a jazz bar and a converted shop house where the musicians actually knew what they were doing. I was falling in love with her, though I didn't want to admit it to myself. I was 60 years old. She was 26. I knew how that looked. I'd seen those couples in Pattaya and Phuket, the old guys with the young Thai women, and I'd judged them. But this was different, I told myself. We had intellectual compatibility. We had genuine conversations. She had her own money. She'd never asked me for anything. That last part was important to me. In all the warnings I'd read about Thai relationships, the common thread was always the woman asking for money, for her sick buffalo, for her mother's hospital bills, for her brother's school fees. Namfon never did that. In fact, she often insisted on paying for her own meals. She had her laptop, her phone, her own apartment, in a decent building in Ratchada. She seemed completely self-sufficient. By June, we'd been together for 4 months, and she suggested we move in together. Her lease was ending, and my condo had 2 bedrooms. It made financial sense, she said. We were spending most nights together anyway. I agreed, though part of me wondered if I was moving too fast. She moved in over a weekend. She didn't have much stuff. Some clothes, her laptop and tech equipment, a few books, some kitchen things. She set up the 2nd bedroom as her office. That's when I made my first mistake. I wanted to be open with her about finances. I wanted to show her that I trusted her. I'd spent my whole marriage to my ex-wife with separate bank accounts, with financial secrets, with a sense that we were roommates, managing a household, rather than true partners. I didn't want that again. So I showed Namfon my portfolio. I showed her the hardware wallets, the seed phrases I kept in a fireproof safe, the breakdown of my holdings. Bitcoin, Ethereum, some altcoins that had done well. I explained how it all worked, how the blockchain verified transactions, how cold storage kept the assets secure offline. She was fascinated. She asked intelligent questions. She understood the technology in a way most people didn't. I felt proud, honestly. Proud to have a partner who could engage with this stuff rather than just glazing over when I talked about cryptography and distributed ledgers. I even let her create a wallet of her own on my computer so I could walk her through a transaction. I sent her 0.1 Bitcoin, which at the time was worth about $6,000. I told her to think of it as a gift, a way to learn the system. She was grateful, but not overly so. She said she'd hold on to it as an investment, that she believed in crypto's future too. That felt right. That felt like we were building something together. I'm trying to remember now when things started to shift. It's hard because it was so gradual, but I think it was sometime in August. We'd been living together for about 2 months. She'd started spending more time on her laptop in the evening, but I figured she was busy with client work. Freelancing could be unpredictable that way. She'd also started going out more with her friends, which I encouraged. I didn't want to be that older foreign guy who isolated his girlfriend from her social life. But there were small things. Her phone was always face down now. She'd changed the passcode at some point, which I only noticed because one day I'd gone to use it to call my own phone when I couldn't find it, and the code I thought I'd seen her use before didn't work. When I mentioned it, she said she'd changed it for security after reading an article about phone theft in Bangkok. That made sense. I was the security expert after all. Of course she'd be thinking about these things. She'd also gotten a new laptop, a nice one, a MacBook Pro, which wasn't cheap even in Thailand. When I asked about it, she said she'd gotten a big payment from a client and decided to upgrade. Her old laptop had been giving her problems. I didn't think much of it. She was a professional. Professionals needed good equipment. What I didn't know was that the old laptop was still very much in use. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In September, she suggested we get married. Not in a big formal way, just a conversation one evening while we were having dinner at home. She said she loved me, that she wanted to build a life with me in Thailand, that marriage would make things easier with visas and with her family, who were more traditional than she was. She said her mother had been asking when we were going to make it official. I should have been more cautious. I should have asked more questions. But the truth is, I wanted to marry her. I'd been happier in those months with Namfon than I'd been in the last decade of my previous marriage. She made me feel young. She made me feel seen. And yes, I was aware of the age difference, but she never made it feel like an issue. She'd tell me she preferred older men, that guys her age were immature and obsessed with gaming and getting drunk. She liked that I could have real conversations, that I'd traveled, that I understood the world. We got married in October at the Amfer, the district office. It was simple. Her mother was there, her brother flew in from Singapore, a couple of her friends came. On my side, I had 2 guys I'd become friendly with from the coworking space, both American expats. One of them, Greg, took me aside beforehand and asked if I was sure about this. He'd been in Thailand for 5 years and had seen a lot of relationships implode. I told him Namfon was different. She had her own money, her own career, her own life. This wasn't one of those situations. He nodded but didn't look convinced. I remember feeling irritated by his skepticism, like he couldn't imagine that someone like Namfon might actually love someone like me for reasons beyond financial security. I understand now that he was trying to help. The wedding itself was fine. Namfon's mother seemed pleasant enough, though she didn't speak much English. Her brother, Chai, was cordial but distant. There was no sin sod, no dowry, which Namfon said was because her family was modern and she wasn't traditional about these things. I appreciated that. I'd heard horror stories about foreigners being asked for millions of baht in dowry payments. After the wedding, things continued normally for a few weeks. We went to Chiang Mai for a short honeymoon. It was beautiful up there, cooler than Bangkok, good food, temples everywhere. Namfon took photos constantly and posted them on her Instagram. I'd never been big on social media, but she said it was important for her freelance business that clients found her through her online presence. In November, I noticed the first real red flag, though I rationalized it away at the time. I'd gone to check one of my hardware wallets because I wanted to move some assets around. The crypto market was doing well and I was thinking about taking some profits. The wallet was in the safe in our bedroom closet, exactly where I'd left it, but when I opened it and connected it to my computer, something felt off. The transaction history looked right, but there was a brief moment where the balance displayed as slightly lower than I expected before correcting itself. I figured it was a syncing issue. The blockchain could be slow sometimes, particularly if you hadn't connected the wallet in a while. I should have investigated further right then, but I didn't. I'd been in security long enough to know that small glitches can be early warnings of larger compromises, but when it's your own system, you want to believe it's fine. You want to believe you've done everything right. Around the same time, Namfon started talking more about her family's financial situation. Nothing dramatic, nothing that felt like a request for money. Just casual mentions that her mother's condo building was increasing the fees, that her brother was looking at PhD programs which were expensive, that she felt bad she couldn't help them more. I told her if she ever needed anything, we could discuss it. We were married now. What was mine was hers. She smiled and said she appreciated that, but she wanted to be independent. She said it was important to her to maintain her own income. I loved that about her. I really did. The independence, the pride, the refusal to be a typical Thai wife dependent on a foreign husband's money. In December, things accelerated. I got an email from my bank in the US, nothing alarming, just a statement notification. But when I opened it, I saw several wire transfers I didn't recognize. They were relatively small, $2,000 here, $3,000 there, but I definitely hadn't authorized them. I immediately called the bank. They said the transfers had been initiated online using my login credentials, had passed two-factor authentication via my phone, and had gone to various cryptocurrency exchanges. I was furious. I thought I'd been hacked. I changed all my passwords, set up new authentication protocols, ran security scans on all my devices. The bank said they'd investigate, but that because the transfers had been properly authenticated, there wasn't much they could do immediately. I filed a fraud report anyway. Namfon was very supportive during all of this. She helped me go through my email history, helped me check for phishing attempts, even suggested some security software she'd read about. She was angry on my behalf. She said this was why crypto needed better regulations, why centralized exchanges were dangerous. All the right things. What I didn't realize was that I'd installed the security software she'd recommended on the same computer where I accessed my cryptocurrency wallets. And that software had a keylogger buried in it. Not obvious malware that would trigger antivirus programs, but a carefully designed script that captured every keystroke, every password, every seed phrase I typed. I didn't figure this out until much later. If I'm being honest, I didn't figure it out at all. Someone else had to show me. By January 2025, about a year after I'd met Namfon, my portfolio had declined significantly. I attributed this to market volatility. Crypto was like that. You could lose 30% in a month and gain it back in the next. I wasn't checking the accounts as obsessively as I used to. I was enjoying life. I was exploring Thailand with my wife. We'd taken trips to Krabi, to Koh Samui, to Pai. She was talking about maybe starting a tech company together, something focused on blockchain solutions for Southeast Asian businesses. I thought it was a great idea. I offered to fund the initial development. In February, her behavior started changing more noticeably. She was gone more often, said she was meeting with potential clients and investors for the business idea. She'd come home late, sometimes not until midnight or after. She was less affectionate, less interested in sex, more irritable when I asked questions about her day. I wondered if the stress of starting a business was getting to her. I tried to be supportive, tried to give her space. One night in March, I couldn't sleep. It was probably 3 a.m. Namfon was asleep next to me. I got up to get some water and noticed her laptop was open in the living room. The screen was dim but not off. I wasn't trying to snoop, I genuinely wasn't, but as I walked past I saw what was on the screen. It was a Telegram chat in Thai, but I recognized some English words scattered through it. Bitcoin, wallet, transfer, and then I saw a number, 700,000, and then I saw USD. My hands started shaking. I stood there in my own living room at 3 a.m, staring at my wife's computer screen, and I felt something cold settle into my chest. I didn't wake her up. I didn't confront her. I very quietly sat down on the couch and started reading through the chat history. My Thai wasn't good enough to understand everything, but I understood enough. She was talking to someone, maybe multiple people, about moving large amounts of cryptocurrency. There were references to hardware wallets, to seed phrases, to exchange accounts. There were screenshots of balances that looked very familiar to me because they matched my own holdings, or what my holdings had been several months ago. I sat there for probably 2 hours, scrolling through messages, taking screenshots with my phone, my mind trying to reject what I was seeing. When Namfon woke up around 6, I was still on the couch. She came out, saw me sitting there with her laptop, and her face changed. The warmth I'd seen there for the past year just vanished. She looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was a problem. She asked what I was doing. I asked her what the Telegram messages were about. She said it was private, that I had no right to look at her personal conversations. I said the conversations appeared to be about my cryptocurrency holdings. She said I was being paranoid and controlling. She said this was exactly why her previous relationship had failed, because the guy couldn't trust her. We argued for probably an hour. She denied everything, said the messages were about a client's business that I was misunderstanding because of the language barrier. She started crying, said she couldn't believe I'd accuse her of stealing from me, that after everything she'd done for me, after leaving her own apartment and her own life to build something with me, I was treating her like a criminal. I wanted to believe her. I really did. but I couldn't ignore what I'd seen. I told her I needed to check my wallets, all of them, immediately. She said fine, said I should check them, said I'd see that I was wrong and then I'd owe her an apology. I went to the bedroom, opened the safe, got out my hardware wallets. I connected the first one to my laptop. The balance was 0. I sat there staring at the screen, thinking there must be an error, that maybe I was looking at the wrong wallet. But no, this was my primary Bitcoin wallet, the one that had held 6 Bitcoin, which at current prices should have been worth about $420,000, gone. I checked the second wallet, 0. The third, 0. Every single hardware wallet I owned, every account I'd set up, systematically drained. The transaction history showed the transfers had happened over the course of several months, small amounts at first, then increasingly larger as presumably she got more confident. The coins had been sent to various exchange addresses, mixed through privacy services, laundered essentially, and then converted to Thai baht and withdrawn. I've been in IT security my entire adult life. I've investigated breaches, I've tracked hackers, I've testified in court cases about digital theft, and I'd been compromised by someone sleeping in my bed because I'd been too stupid and too arrogant to consider that the threat could be that close. When I came back out of the bedroom, Namfon was gone. Her laptop was gone. The few clothes she'd left in the drawers were gone. Her toothbrush was gone from the bathroom. She'd moved with incredible efficiency, probably while I was checking the wallets. I called her phone. It went straight to voicemail. I sent messages online. They never delivered, which meant she'd blocked me. I stood in my condo, this place that was supposed to be our home, and I felt something break inside me that I don't think will ever be repaired. It wasn't just the money. Though $720,000 is a life-destroying amount for most people to lose. It was the realization that every moment of the past 14 months had been a performance. Every kiss, every conversation, every time she'd said she loved me, all of it had been in service of the theft. I reported it to the police. The Thai police were polite but ultimately unhelpful. They said cryptocurrency theft was complicated, that jurisdiction was unclear, that if the money had already been moved through exchanges and converted, there was almost no chance of recovery. They suggested I hire a lawyer. I hired a lawyer. He was expensive and pessimistic. He said that even if we could prove Namfon had stolen the cryptocurrency, and that was a big if, given that she'd had legitimate access to my computer and I'd voluntarily shown her how the wallets worked, recovering assets that had been laundered through privacy services was nearly impossible. He said I could pursue a civil case, but it would cost tens of thousands of dollars with no guarantee of success. He asked if Namfon had any assets in her own name. I realized I had no idea. I'd never checked. She'd always said she was renting her apartment, that she didn't own property, that she was building her career and savings. For all I knew, every word of that had been a lie too. I did some investigating on my own. I found out that the security software she'd recommended, the one I'd installed in December, was indeed malicious. Not something widely known, not something that would show up in standard virus scans, but custom built. I found the keylogger buried in its code. It had captured everything. Every password I'd typed, every seed phrase I'd entered, every authentication code I'd received via text message. It had been sending all of that data to a remote server. I traced the server to a hosting company in Singapore, but beyond that, the trail went cold. I found her real Instagram account, not the one she'd shown me, but one she'd kept private. She had a different name on it, though the photos were definitely her. She was in clubs, in expensive restaurants, wearing designer clothes, posing with Thai guys who looked nothing like me. There were photos from before we met, photos from during our relationship, photos from after. Her life had continued in parallel to ours, a completely separate existence I'd never seen. I found out through Greg that she'd been known in certain circles of the expat community. Not widely, but there were whispers. She dated at least 2 other foreign men before me, both older, both involved in cryptocurrency. One had left Thailand suddenly. The other was still around but refused to talk about her. Greg said he'd tried to warn me but hadn't wanted to push too hard because he figured I'd just think he was being cynical or racist. I found out that her education story was half true. She had studied computer science, but she dropped out in her third year. The freelance web development work was real, but it was small projects, nowhere near enough to fund the lifestyle she'd been maintaining. The middle-class family story was completely fabricated. Her mother lived in a small apartment in Minburi, a working-class neighborhood far from the city center. Her brother wasn't doing a master's in Singapore. He was doing time for credit card fraud. The person I'd married didn't exist. Namfon was real, but everything I'd known about her was constructed. She was 26 years old, and she'd built an entire false life to extract cryptocurrency from foreign men dumb enough to trust her. And I'd been the dumbest of all, because I thought my expertise would protect me. I thought being smart about technology meant I was smart about people. I was wrong. I'm telling you all this in this kind of clinical way now, but I need you to understand that when it was happening, I was devastated. I couldn't eat properly for weeks. I'd wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning with my heart racing, my mind replaying every conversation, every moment, looking for the signs I'd missed. I kept thinking about that first meeting at the coworking space, wondering if she'd targeted me specifically or if I'd just been in the right place at the right time. I kept thinking about her glasses, the way she'd been so focused on her laptop. Had that been real, or had she noticed me walking in with my MacBook Pro and my expensive watch and decided I was worth the effort? I contacted my daughters. They were sympathetic but not surprised. They said they'd been worried when I'd told them I was getting married to someone they'd never met, someone so much younger, but they hadn't wanted to seem judgmental. My ex-wife, when she found out, said something that I keep thinking about. She said that I'd always thought I could logic my way through emotional situations, that I'd always believed understanding systems meant understanding people. She said that was why our marriage had failed, because I'd treated her like a problem to be solved, rather than a person to be known. She wasn't wrong. I left Thailand in April. I'd been there for 15 months total. I had about $80,000 left in my US bank account, and another $40,000 in Ethereum that I'd kept in a separate wallet she apparently hadn't found. $120,000 out of the $900,000 I'd started with. I'd lost 78% of my assets to a woman who'd convinced me she loved me because I was too arrogant to consider that I could be a mark. I'm back in Austin now, living in a small apartment, working as a security consultant again because I need the income. I'm 61 years old, and I'm starting over from almost nothing. I spend a lot of time thinking about how it happened, not just mechanically, though I understand that part now. The keylogger, the patient waiting, the systematic draining of accounts small enough to not trigger immediate attention, but psychologically, how did I become that person? How did someone who'd spent decades protecting systems from exactly this kind of attack become so blind to it happening in his own life? I think part of it was loneliness. I'd been alone for a long time after my divorce. I'd convinced myself I was fine with it, that I preferred independence. But when Namfon showed interest in me, when she made me feel desired and interesting and young again, I didn't want to examine it too closely. I wanted to believe it was real because the alternative was too painful. Part of it was ego. I thought I was different from those other guys in Pattaya and Phuket. I thought because I was educated, because I was successful in tech, because I understood Thai culture better than some tourist, I was immune to the obvious scams. I wasn't some lonely retiree drinking himself to death in a bar. I was sophisticated, I was smart, I was careful. Except I wasn't any of those things when it mattered. And part of it was just wanting to believe in love. After my marriage ended, I'd become very cynical about relationships. I'd started thinking maybe love was just a convenient fiction people told themselves to justify cohabitation and shared expenses. But then I met Namfon, and she made me feel like maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe love was real. Maybe it was possible to find someone who saw you for who you were and valued that. I wanted that to be true so badly that I ignored every piece of evidence suggesting it wasn't. I've learned some things from this experience. I've learned that intelligence in one domain doesn't transfer to another. I've learned that being good at security systems doesn't mean you're good at seeing through social engineering when you're the target. I've learned that age gaps in relationships aren't automatically exploitative, but they create power imbalances that can be exploited, and you need to be honest with yourself about that. I've learned that in Thailand, like anywhere else, there are good people and bad people, and the bad people are often very good at appearing to be good people. I've learned that cultural differences can mask red flags if you're not careful, because you can always rationalize strange behavior as just being different cultural norms. I've learned that trust is earned over years, not months, and that rushing into legal and financial entanglements with someone you barely know is stupid regardless of how strong the feelings are. Most importantly, I've learned that when you're the kind of person who thinks they can't be fooled, you're exactly the kind of person who will be fooled, because you're not watching for it, because your ego won't let you see it even when it's right in front of you. If you're reading this and you're in a relationship with someone in Thailand, or anywhere else for that matter, where there's a significant age difference and financial imbalance, I'm not going to tell you it's automatically a scam, but I am going to tell you to be very, very careful. Keep your finances separate. Don't show your partner your full financial picture. Don't share passwords or seed phrases or access to accounts. Don't put property in their name. Don't lend money you can't afford to lose. And if they pressure you to do any of these things, if they make you feel like not trusting them completely means you don't love them enough, that's your red flag right there. I lost $720,000 because I thought love meant complete transparency and complete trust. It doesn't. Love means respect and care and commitment, but it doesn't mean surrendering your basic financial security to someone you've known for less than 2 years. If someone truly loves you, they'll understand your need to protect yourself. If they don't understand that, they don't love you. They love your money. I don't know if I'll ever really recover from this, not just financially, though that's going to take probably another decade of working when I should be retired, but emotionally. I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone again in that way. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at a relationship and not see the transaction underneath it. That's maybe the saddest part of all this. Namfon didn't just take my money. She took my ability to believe that people can love each other for reasons beyond material benefit. And I'll never get that back.